At long last, joining us from Weimar Lake, Minnesota, our good friend Alan May, TV star from the Washington Capitals television broadcast. Happy summer, Alan. It looks like you were having a blast there with our buddy Jeff Pedersen. Give me an update on that, sir.
I have the Pedersen boys here, and we've been here. We had a memorial. We've had some concerts. It's been outstanding. Today's the first rainy day we've had, but it's going to clear up in about an hour, and we're going to get back to doing what we do best.
Okay, I did not know that Brad Pedersen was there as well. So happy Independence Day, gentlemen. And I know that you're having a blast. Alan, how would you answer this question as to who's winning NHL free agency here 4 days into it?
Well, I would say I look at the Toronto Maple Leafs, and they've added better skaters, guys that can move the puck, that they can play with a better pace. I thought they had too many guys that were slow last season. I didn't like their defense. I like their defense with I'm not against Luke Schenn. I just didn't like him playing as the number one right D-man. I thought he should be in the third hole and be your number 6, 7 guy. Justin Holl, haven't been a big fan of, but I think you add Klingberg to the mix. And what he can do in the power play, right shot defenseman, you never know if he's going to pass or shoot. He can get the puck up the ice. I think they needed that. They needed to improve the skating on the back end. And there's a few tweaks that they can make over the course of the season. But I thought when they brought those players in late in the year, they were slow. They had identities, but they were slow. And as we saw in these playoffs, you had to be fast and you had to be physical. Well, if you can't get there, you can't be physical. And I didn't think the Leafs could get there in the playoffs. So I think the Leafs have done a very good job of making a better team. I'm a big fan of Brad Treliving and the things that he thinks are important in building teams. And I'd expect he's probably going to go to the Calgary Flames and probably try to find someone he can grab off the blue line there to really upgrade the Toronto Maple Leafs back end.
So I got a lot to get to with Alan May. I see our audience has chimed in because I threatened to tell some stories near the end of hour one, Alan. I said, I don't think anybody cares. They all said, no, we want to hear those stories. So when Alan and I are done, we will. But I got to pick Alan's brain because, to be honest, obviously I respect you so much, and I think you're just the best guy. And I want to know your take on this adage. Is the team that signs the biggest free agent the team that wins free agency? And if so, could Carolina be given consideration over Dmitry Orlov? You watched Orlov for so long in Washington. Was he at the top of your free agent board?
Well, I would think for defensemen, he wanted an 8-year contract in Washington and a big one, and we knew he wasn't going to get it. There's a lot of hard miles on that guy. He's a great defensive defenseman, something I never thought he'd become, because when he first was in the league and paired with Mike Green, they'd be on the offensive zone for a minute or two, rolling around, getting shots, shooting from everywhere, zinging the puck around. But then they'd be 2 minutes inside the defensive zone. The other team would be doing it, but they wouldn't have two defensemen like that. So I look at Dmitry. That was a great signing by the Carolina Hurricanes, but I don't think that's how you win free agency. I think when you look at your slots, and Team Canada, over the course of time, they put a program together years and years ago, the Hockey Excellence Program, of how you slot all your first liners, your second liners, everyone, third and fourth, and what the key ingredients have to be on your team. And it goes through all 6-year defensemen and, hopefully your goaltending. But I think right now I'm looking at the Dallas Stars. They made some minor tweaks. I look at the Toronto Maple Leafs. They made some key tweaks because the guys they brought in are gritty. They skate well. They have the nose for the net. They can create offense. But when I saw Max Domi in the playoffs this year, he was all in, fully involved every game. Bertuzzi, first kick at the can, I believe, in the playoffs, had 10 points in 7 games. He was all in. He fit in very well with the Bruins. But I think these are huge upgrades for the Toronto Maple Leafs. So I'm just looking at who got the guys in the best slots. And I think right now the Toronto Maple Leafs are winning that. There's some other teams out there. They're still going to have to make trades to assemble their rosters. But I look at the New York Rangers as an example. On the trade deadline, and near the trade deadline this last spring, they bring in Patrick Kane and Tarasenko and all these other players. Well, they had too many guys that were the same type of player that needed power play time. They all played the exact same position on the power play, so it didn't work. They had too many guys they were trying to keep happy. And then the guys that really got them to the top of the standings and where they were on the Rangers, all of a sudden they're taking a backseat to these new guys. So I think when you slot players in, what they've done in Toronto, it's a very intelligent signing period for Brad Treliving. I thought the Leafs were kind of a disaster last year in free agency. I thought they were a disaster at the trade deadline. And right now, I can't believe I'm saying so many positive things about the Toronto Maple Leafs, but they've done a very good job.
I know. Well, I also know you're not the biggest fan of Kyle Dubas, and Dubas ain't there anymore, so you're allowed to do that, Al. We got a lot of questions that have come in from our viewers for you. John in Winnipeg, John Ohm says, Alan, how long is Alex Ovechkin going to play? Into his 50s? What do you think, Al?
I think he's going to play out this contract. There's a lot of wear and tear in that body. I don't think there's been any offensive player that's ever played so long, that's played so physical. Granted, he's not as physical as he was, but I'm not sure the body can take much. We know that they want him to get one more kick at winning the Stanley Cup. He certainly wants to become the all-time leading goal scorer in the history of the National Hockey League. And, so I think there's 3 years left on his contract. I expect him to play out those 3 years if the body will let him. But we saw coming down the pike last year, it was bothered by some injuries. They were nagging. So he really needed not to make the playoffs. They needed to have an offseason where all those older, awesome Washington Capitals could, recover, recuperate, rehabilitate, whatever they needed to do to get back at it. But I expect Ovi to be flying with the new coach, a different system, different looks on the power play. I'm expecting another monster season, which shouldn't be happening. I didn't think he'd be able to just keep pumping away like he's been doing, but, he's got 90-some goals the last 2 seasons, and he's been a little banged up doing so.
I got to ask you about your Caps. Mitch Love has joined the Capitals as an assistant coach. You were saying on this show you felt the Flames should hire him as their head coach. He's gone to Washington as an assistant. What do you know about that from the AHL's Wranglers, 2-time Coach of the Year in the Apple?
You know what I like about Mitch Love signing there? I thought for sure he'd probably be considered for the Flames, and I was very surprised. Going in a different direction, a different voice. The MO on him is that he's a great communicator, a high-energy guy that really understands the game. And I know he was offered in Toronto, but I think maybe cutting the cord and going with a new system and a new group of people that, you're always going to be able to go back to Treliving if he's looking for you in the future, maybe to make him the head coach down the line. But I think a young progressive staff that the Capitals have, they need to teach their new younger defensemen they're trying to get in the lineup. I think you come with great credentials. He hasn't been a coach all that long, pro hockey, just 2 years. But I think it's important that he gets on the bench. He learns how to communicate with the big guys who are making the big bucks. He's got a John Carlson who's an $8 million-plus guy, and guys that have been around the block, have won Stanley Cups. He's going to learn, they're going to learn, but he's going to inject new life, enthusiasm, and some new age ideas like Spencer Carberry is as well. So I'm happy that the Caps went in a direction. I thought the defense coach had to be critically important. I didn't like the look of the D the last few seasons and a lot of the things they were doing. There was a couple things with Lavi's system that I did not like. I thought for an aging team, it made a slow team slower, and I thought they needed to be more perpetual motion. I think they will be a more puck-hungry team, a more five-man unit team that's not just sitting backwards and standing around when they don't have the puck. So I'm expecting a lot of great things out of these new young coaches in Washington.
Way out of left field with this one, but John in Edmonton, your hometown, Alan, wants to know if you think Atlanta could get an NHL team again. And we are on the air in Atlanta, WQEE radio right now, so I'm sure a lot of people would love to know your thoughts on that.
Well, I really don't want the league to expand past 32 teams, but Atlanta, it was ownership problems there. It wasn't, they weren't doing anything to make the Thrashers a better franchise. And there was infighting. They only cared about the basketball team. And it sounds like they're hot and heavy. So when I hear all the rumors and the people that I've been speaking with about this, it sounds like they're back on the radar, as is Houston, Salt Lake City. All those are legitimate. The people I've talked to, they're pretty high up in the league. They believe in it. But I just don't know if they're going to go. I know everyone wants, as an owner, these new franchises may go for $1 billion because the league's kind of healthy right now. Everyone's having to restructure television deals in the regional markets in the U.S. Canada's got its own issues. But I expect Salt Lake, I played a season there, and I absolutely loved it. It's a great hockey town. They've had, when they were in the IHL, they sold out almost every game for years. They were Calgary's farm team. They were the Islanders' farm team. I won a championship there. We had about 25,000 people in a building. They were sitting in the aisles for our championship game years and years ago against Orlando. So, those are teams. I think Atlanta's got another chance, but I wouldn't be surprised with the guy that wants to own the team in Salt Lake City. Deep pockets, a ton of money, a very progressive guy. He's got great ideas on how to promote his team regionally on television. So there's a lot of things I like about Salt Lake. Houston, I think, is a great hockey market, but they want big league hockey. And if they can go in there with the same ownership group that owns the arena and owns the Rockets, I think they got a healthy chance to go there. So it's Atlanta would probably be on the outside looking in when you're looking at Houston and Salt Lake City, in my opinion.
Yeah, but didn't that Salt Lake City one just come out of nowhere? I'd never really even heard that before, and now they're like a front runner.
Yeah, well, it's because of the owner. And the biggest thing there, they just put a ton of money into their arena downtown. But that was one of those arenas. The old owner of the Utah Jazz built a basketball arena where the stands, so when we played games in there, there was about 4,000 or 5,000 stands that couldn't be used. They were just flat. It was like the old Phoenix Arena downtown. It wasn't made for hockey. It was made with these guys who own the teams. They didn't want competition. They wanted to build those arenas for themselves to keep the National Hockey League out of there. It kind of worked. It's ruined, the great things that the Coyotes had when they first got there. They had a great fan base downtown, and then they moved so far away. But I don't think any team that's ever moved away from their fan base has really hurt it. Florida's done it. Ottawa's done it. Tampa did it for a while. Then they figured out to get right smack dab downtown. And what a great event they hold at all times, and it's easily accessible to everyone. I played downtown in Miami. I love the new arena, but it's a suburb of Fort Lauderdale, and all those original fans, they've got a lot. You know how bad the traffic is there. I don't have to tell it, you especially, but you have to stay where your fan base is. So Salt Lake City's an easy town to get around, but they would need a brand new arena that's made for hockey and basketball.
You're a TV guy. You get this. We have 2 minutes. What do you expect out of Connor Bedard and the Chicago Blackhawks this season?
Well, I'm really worried about his cast of characters that he's around, because when I look at how tough it was for a lot of those first overall picks at Edmonton because they didn't have the roster. I look at Sidney Crosby. He went to Pittsburgh. His roster was pretty damn good. Same thing, Patrick Kane, when it was 3 years until a cup. Sidney was 3 years until a cup. They had way better rosters right now. The aging guys that they've signed, I'm kind of baffled at the Corey Perry for $4 million. Foligno certainly for $4 million. They're older, slower. It's going to be easier to focus on Connor Bedard. I know he's an outstanding talent, but he's going against real defensemen that can really skate, that have been, they're the best of the best in the National Hockey League. Even the guys you don't like are really good. So it's not going against guys that are, one bad game away playing in the SJHL or the AJHL when you're in Regina, and you're going against the big guys. Like if he goes against Vegas, they've got a really big team, really big defensemen that can all skate, that can shut him down. So I hope for Connor Bedard, they wheel and deal and get him some guys that he can play with, so he's not too easy to focus on, because guys are going to take a great deal of pride in trying to shut him down. And when you have more players, it's easier to get away from coverage and do things. So I'm hoping they upgrade that roster so we're not sitting there, what's wrong with Connor? He needs a cast of characters in the NHL, because you look, as great as McDavid is in Edmonton, he didn't have a cast around him, and it was easier to focus. They weren't having success. They weren't getting to the playoffs. You start to build and develop that roster, it makes it harder to focus on just one player. So I'm hoping Connor gets help as we go down the way, because last year when the Capitals were in there and Ovi scored the hat trick for his 800, I'm surprised he didn't have 10 goals, and I'm surprised the team didn't score 20 that night, because it was a very poor team on the ice. They were all NHL players, but they just shouldn't have been on the same team at the same time in the same game. So he definitely has to have an upgraded roster so he can really dazzle us. And hopefully we have an exciting Rookie of the Year race this year. It's not just one guy. I'm hoping Fantilli puts pressure on him. I'm hoping he puts pressure on Fantilli. But I'm excited to see him in an NHL uniform. I'm excited to see him shoot the puck all the time. And I'm hoping that he has a long, incredible, awesome career.
A fantastic update. Thanks for joining us last minute, Al. I get back to doing all the fun things I'm watching you guys do, and enjoy the rest of summer.
All right, take care. Talk to you soon.